Hi, this is Trent Clark. Welcome to the Winners Find a Way show. I am a CEO of Leadershipity, serial entrepreneur, international speaker, longtime coach in professional baseball coaching in 3 World Series, and I'm excited to welcome my guest, Brad Stevens. How are you doing, Brad?
Fantastic, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Man, I'm so excited to have you on board. Like, this is just you and I have been friends a little while, and always love your insights, man. I mean, you're one of these guys who like is the entrepreneur. I think you're like, the horse whisperer. You're like the entrepreneur whisperer. All right. So it's I know many folks lean on your advice. You've got a great service-based business, global service-based business that I love and use, by the way, in Outsource Access. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, but thanks for coming on the show, man. Super excited.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. Thanks for the kind comments. I don't know if I quite live up to entrepreneur whisperer, but definitely have plenty of scars and blood and sweat along the way to kind of get some experience that happy to share.
That's awesome. So today, for our listeners, if you've ever faced stiff adversity, felt like the losses are mounting and you need to find a better way, well, you came to the right place. Whether you are already an entrepreneur, athlete, business leader, or just looking to start your journey to being elite, this is the perfect podcast and show for you. So always bringing on these 1%ers who come along, and Brad is no different. There's going to be a little time for Q&A at the end. So if you want to put those questions in the chat, I'll look for them. And we will get to them, hopefully. A few highlights on Brad Stevens. Before I do that, Brad, tell them where people can find you.
Sure. I mean, all the standard places. I mean, from a company standpoint and what we do with our company, outsourceaccess.com is our website where we provide vetted VAs and for entrepreneurs and business owners globally. BradStevensTraining.com is kind of my speaker site where it's got a lot of content about organizations or spoken content that I cover. And Facebook and LinkedIn, you just look up my name, you'll find. Love to connect, and we're pushing out a lot of content and information that may be helpful. So those are the standard spots.
All right. Awesome. So that's a little bit of background on you. Lifetime entrepreneur, domestic, international businesses, distribution now across 18 countries. It's amazing. Outsource Access is an offshore virtual service firm, grown to 340 employees in under 2 years, with a target of 600 staff by the end of 21. So you are kicking, and I'm sure this pandemic remote environment may have served you really well, as we'll talk a little bit about that. The co-founder of a startup software platform, One-on-One. Do you still have that one, Brad?
Yeah, it's actually something we launched during this kind of whole pandemic situation to be able to rapidly connect members of an organization to create connectivity.
Nice. Love it. And then also keynote speaker, over 100 events globally. You're an international speaker, BST International in the USA, Canada, South America, Latin America, Canada, Africa, Middle East, Australia, Asia. Speaks on agility and scaling for CEO peer groups with opportunities to share stages alongside thought leaders such as John Maxwell and Deepak Chopra. Nice. And then, of course, also you have your own podcast, Automate and Delegate, what you should not be doing. I love that. What you should not be doing.
Right.
You've got some great guests that share specific tools, resources, strategies, fast track growth. 9-year member of the Global Entrepreneur Organization, as well as myself. Both of us are EO members. You are the EO Regional Director, East Regional Director for Member Engagement. 22 chapters, over 1,000 members that you're garnering that. Are you having a hard time staying busy, Brad? Like, how many kids now? Well, how many kids you got?
2 little ones, 5-year-old and 2-year-old. So.
Oh yeah, 5 and 2. Yeah, the little ones chasing them around. Like, man, I just see you as a bit of a couch potato, Brad. I'll be honest. Like with just nothing going on here. So incredible. But I also really was tied to some of the philanthropy stuff that you've done. Advising business and civic leaders, some direct strategic work with Martin Luther King Jr., or actually the third, for his philanthropic efforts, launching some VA Give Back, a documentary film that was pretty cool about the firm selected to run a think tank on economic growth and at the United Nations headquarters. So,
yeah, it's pretty
cool experience. Man, come on, and a 5-year charitable event to support breast cancer awareness. So, there's no moss growing on this Rolling Stone. I'll tell you that right now, Brad. So tell everybody, like, why do you come on and do a show like this? Like, you come on with me. We always talk shop. We're talking about winners find a way and how to figure out a way to win. Why do you come and deliver to the audience?
Well, I mean, I'm 41 years old now, and so I've had enough chance to beat my head against the wall as an entrepreneur to get enough experience through the years. And I've had a ton of people that have given me shortcuts or insights. I mean, I'm one of those people that, look, if somebody's got a faster, quicker way and they figured things out, I just soon take that path and try and go bang my head against the wall. And so, if I can extend a little less head banging for some people on some paths of growth and finding their direction, on multiple topics that we can kind of touch on, happy to do so. I had a lot of people in my path throughout the years that kind of gave me those shortcuts, and I'm happy maybe can provide some of those along the way.
I love it. Let's talk. Let's just jump right into that. Your number one shortcut right now that is creating huge value in your life. Tell me that one right now.
Learning how to get out of the business and get an amazing management team that can run and build and scale it. That's probably the biggest things, with our recent company, and we've grown fast, as you shared, we're about 350 employees now and just over 2 years now. And, a lot of entrepreneurs just, and people in other professions as well, just struggle. They just get kind of caught in the detail and they just never get out and work on the strategic growth and plan to scale. They're just constantly living in the business. And that's why, less than 4% of businesses in the US ever get over $1 million, per year. Because they're constantly living in that. And I've been guilty of that myself. And so we implemented a system called Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, that a lot of listeners may be familiar with. And it's a framework that is designed to get that business owner, that entrepreneur in that visionary role where they deliver the highest and best use of their time and truly where they're the happiest, and get what's called an integrator, which is basically that side-by person that works with the entrepreneur that can help execute and bring all the ideas to life and kind of drive the day-to-day detail operations. And implementing EOS in our business, which we did middle of last year, and truly getting that framework in place has just set me free to really let me focus on strategy and growth and building the company and getting out of the detail, and has been a key part of our growth and scale. So whatever system you use, there's traction, there's scaling up, there's a bunch of different frameworks that are out there. Yeah. Whatever you do, choose one of some kind to get yourself out and get the right infrastructure and management team in place. It's been amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I love Gino Wickman, good a friend of mine and a fellow EO member for a lot of years. Yeah. I think he still is. And Gino wrote EOS. He wrote the book Traction, which is the EOS system. So good shout out for Gino there. And that's a great tool, right? And I agree with you 100%. Like, find a system for sure. I was going to say one of the tools that I have been using is Blinkist. I am absolute fan. You all talk about, hey, CEOs read 50 books a year. I have 5 children and 3 companies, so I'm trying to keep up with Brad, just trying to stay busy. And so, that's been a game changer for me. Like, how do I get in? And people like yourself and people that are really well read and have been through things always come up to me and go, hey, Trent, have you read? And I'm like, oh man, like if I stacked another book on my shelf, if I look like 10 years ago, in my office, I had like a stack of like 22 books at one point that had been recommended or given, that I went out and bought on good recommendations. I'm just trying to get to them, right? And I could never get to them. So I'm like, oh man. And Blinkist has been my savior. It's been a great way. It's basically book reviews in 15 minutes, either written or audio, which is huge for people like me that are moving around the world and delivering content everywhere. So that was huge. And then also, a secondary shout out to Evernote that they synchronize together. So if you're taking any notes in Blinkist, all saved down into your Evernote, which has been huge for me to reference high quality work and adapt it and put it into our work. So that's been huge.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right.
When some of the executive book summaries is a similar one that that I've used. But I'll share on that point that you're talking about, Trent, because that's another thing too, is I kept finding myself as well, and I still consume content. But one of the things when we did EOS implementation is our EOS implementer had us reread a good old classic, Good to Great, the old Jim Collins, Good to Great. Yeah. And we read that together as a management team. And I read it in my late 20s through the lens of a young entrepreneur. It's like, oh, these are some great ideas and so forth. I'd say I reread that, and as leading this group, and then being president of the entrepreneur organization for Atlanta, I had a lot of stuff, plus being in the middle of COVID. And it was like rediscovering it for the first time. And I'm like, these are the most timeless principles that will last forever if you can fundamentally use these. the whole concept of disciplined people, thought and action, the hedgehog concept, the flywheel concept,
So
the
true.
right people, right seats, the level 5 leadership, like all those frameworks. It's like, I don't need to look any further, right? If I can just really squeeze all the juice out of this. So I love consuming content, and I'm the next to consume the next book, but I've tried to kind of plug my ears a little bit and be like, you know what, let me squeeze all the juice out of some of the frameworks that I know exist already. But I just move on to and entrepreneurs, a lot of times we can be guilty of that. Is I think we can be information consumers at scale, but we never fully digest and execute what we learn before we move on to the next idea. So I've tried to be a little bit even more disciplined on my content consumption as well, to really make sure I'm maximizing what I've already consumed a lot of times.
Yeah. And, I think that's a great reference book, because there's a Collins book that I reference a lot with my clients, and it's Built to Last. And it's foundational, right? Like, it's not like, hey, maybe we should do some of these things. Like, hey, if you don't do these things, sustainability, one of those key iddies, right, becomes a problem. Like, I don't know if you're gonna make it if you're not built to last here. Like, well, do we have to have key people in positions, because we got a couple duds that aren't working out great, but they're really nice people, so we're just holding on, and the whole department's suffering. Like, well, man, and then all of a sudden you put a pandemic on that sandwich, and all of a sudden, you don't have a good sandwich. All of a sudden, things are not looking good. So that's big, man. So all right, so I want to jump into Brad Stevens a little bit. Like, let's get to know you a little bit. Like, when you talk about growing, did you grow up in Atlanta?
I did. Yeah, I'm one of the few rare native Atlantans.
Okay. All right. So you're home. All right. So was there a most impactful pivot for you as a kid? Like, you knew, like, hey, this is what I want to do, or you had an experience and said, I'm just going to keep outperforming people at my level? Because you mentioned a big statistic. Only less than 4% of all businesses in the United States make $1 million or more. Like, that's bonkers. I mean, you talk about small business, like, this whole country's founded on it, right? Shout out to Carol Roth and her book. Like, small business is where it's at. And so when you think about 1 million, and listen, I'm no big business just because I'm not the Dial Corp, right? You and I just yet. So what about talk about, is there something that impacted you that said, hey, this is the direction I want to go?
Well, I mean, I was fortunate to kind of grow up in a bit of an entrepreneurial kind of environment. My grandfather had started kind of a business in the woodworking kind of space, and woodworking and aluminum space. And then my dad ended up getting involved with that business. So I kind of grew up seeing entrepreneurship around me. I joke around, there was always like a whiteboard permanently hanging over the fireplace, like in our house. Like, there was always some kind of ideas flying around. And
I love that.
So it was,
no reason for a TV. We have a whiteboard.
Right, exactly. Just get high on markers and ideas. But
it's your own. This is us right here.
Right,
it's,
exactly.
High on marker ink and our whiteboard ideas.
Actually,
I love it.
I have to coin that. I just came up with that. That could be good for the whiteboard the whiteboard business. But yeah, I mean, being around it, I mean, any of us, right? Any person that grows up, I mean, if you grow up and both your parents are doctors, right? I mean, you're going to have a proclivity either completely 180 degrees against it, or, kind of be grown, drawn to it. And so, so for me, I was kind of around it. And funny enough, my dad took me to school all the time when I was in elementary school. He drove me to school every morning on the way to work and would drop me off. And I just was really curious, and we just had conversations about business and entrepreneurship, and even at a super young age. And so my first company was in was 3rd or 4th grade, and it had a micro machine rental business. You remember those little mini cars, back in the day, with the dude that spoke 1,000 miles an hour? He spoke really, really fast and did those commercials and the micro machines. But anyway, I loved those. I asked for them for all the birthdays and Christmases, and I collected a bunch of them. And my parents enjoyed Crown Royal from time to time. So they had those like purple Crown Royal bags. And so I had them full of micro machines. And I went into my little Christian school, 3rd or 4th grade. And this was I rented micro machines to all of my friends. And it's funny, my mom still got the folder. I had a VP of marketing. I had a frequent customer punch list. I had a little newsletter that I wrote out on a typewriter.
Wow. Wow. In elementary school.
Yeah, it's like 3rd or 4th grade. So it was,
dang.
But I think being around it, I mean, that's just a testament. If you're around it and kind of having that dialogue, happening. And so anyway, so that was kind of my first foray in entrepreneurship. And then I started a tutoring company in high school. Actually, it was a way to kind of help kids bridge the summer gap. So I just went to all the middle school counselors and I said, who's struggling with math or who wants to get ahead? And they gave me the list, and I had about 18 to 20
I mean,
students.
it's brilliant, right? It's just
Yeah.
brilliant. Like that's just thinking. That's just thinking, in my opinion, just like on top of it and recognizing where the need is. Like, hey, I don't know where the need is, but I know someone who does know where the need's at, right? And that is
Sure.
so smart. I feel a little bit, sorry for your 5-year-old because he's got like 5 years old. He's got like 5 years to create a business, or else he's gonna be running from behind here. Like better get it going, right? Like there's gonna be some pressure. It's awesome. And
Yeah.
I come from a very similar environment, right? Newspaper delivery was big. I mean, I was running my own route in elementary school, and my dad was a big part of it. My dad owned his own firm, so we had a lot of great conversations around him helping me on a couple of mornings with papers and things like that. And man, I was curious, right? That was a big thing. So let's go to this next part,
Yeah.
Brad. I love the quote from Chris McChesney and Sean Covey from The 4 Disciplines of Execution. Also a good book. Winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way. Let's talk a little bit about your background coming up. I mean, sounds like you've had bunches of wins. Talk to me about one of those setbacks in your background where, you were like up against it, but you figured out how to way to overcome, come back and bring it back.
Sure. No, and I'm a huge fan of 4DX. Actually, interestingly, I kind of brought a little bit of 4DX into EOS. So the way that you do goals in 4DX, where you create your quarterly goals and come with the leading and lag indicators. So actually kind of baked that into kind of our EOS framework.
For sure.
Yeah. It's the 4 disciplines there. And I actually used it to run our board for EO Atlanta this past year as well. It's just simple, lean process. But yeah, I completely agree. What gets measured is what gets done. And it changes the behavior. For me, a pretty profound setback, but it's also, there's silver linings to setbacks, as most of us tend to see if you're looking for the opportunity in it. So my business before this one, we actually manufactured and distributed teeth whitening products all over the world. We had a manufacturing partner, and we had a beauty division. We had a dental division, about 10,000 accounts. And we had a bunch of different teeth whitening products, but one of them was a product that had teeth whitening gel on one side and lip gloss on the other. We had done thousands of units, been really successful with it. Had great feedback from the marketplace. We're thinking about launching it as its own separate product and business. But the next batch that we got manufactured, we had a manufacturer in Taiwan that was very high end. They did a bunch of high end cosmetic manufacturing. I mean, ISO 9000 certified, so on and so forth. Well, in our next batch, one of the suppliers changed the bioadhesive glue that held the little brush onto the stem that the teeth whitening gel piece went on. So they did that portion, and they shipped it to our manufacturer in California that would fill the teeth whitening gel. Well, they went to go fill this next batch where this supplier down the chain had changed this glue, and it would take about 60 days, but it would start reacting, and it would build up gas, and they would either leak or explode. And so the next several thousand units, and because when you filled it immediately, you didn't know immediately that there was a reaction. It took a couple of months. That means we got a chance to fill it, ship it, get in our customers' hands, and it started either cracking or you'd open it and literally it would shoot across the room. That was a pretty big mess that we had to navigate, and thousands of units, tons and tons of refunds, just a mess. And cash got tight, got super lean. And it was a place where I just was not sure how we were going to kind of get on the other side. And that was kind of my COVID sort of situation I had to deal with in that business a number of years ago. And I had to find a way to win. And so I'd heard people talk about this whole outsourcing gig economy thing. And this is, 8-10 years ago at this point. And I really dug into it. I remember one night I was 5 hours on the computer, and I learned about a platform called Elance. And it's like Elance and Odesk merged to become Upwork.
Yes.
Yeah. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to save our business and it's going to redefine how I do everything going forward. So long story short, I just dug in, learned about it, how you could tap into these gig economy resources all over the world, very low cost, very effective to do everything from websites to videos to stuff I didn't even know you could do, like data scraping or have people log into all my sales reps, LinkedIn accounts and do connections. And so learning how to do that helped us climb out of that hole and actually save that business at that time. And then it created the foundation of my knowledge, obviously. And so I continued to use that, and I became the go-to person to learn how to do all this stuff and outsourcing. And EO Atlanta, the chapter here, people would ask me to do lunch and learns. And so when I ended up exiting with that business, it was my forum that said, Brad, people come to you all the time about this outsourcing gig economy stuff. Why don't you start a business around it? So for several years, I did consulting and speaking, and then decided to launch our own operation. So from crisis to what thought was going to be the end of our company to creating a way to find a way to win, that led to subject matter and content that I had to learn that translated into probably the most aligned and excited I've ever been as an entrepreneur in this business.
That's awesome. I mean, and I think that's where a lot of people miss. And you bring such a good point. The silver lining of challenge, right? The silver lining of the issues we face and what we're going through in that. And there is, if we're looking for it, right? I like the quote, and I've heard a couple of people say it on the show where, hey, you either win or you learn. And when you're losing, man, I've always learned so much when I'm losing, right? When I'm winning, it's kind of like, oh, well, hey, we're winning, on to the next game, like that last game was easy. But when we lose, we all break down the film, we review the tapes, everybody, where were you at on this play? Where was I at? Where was I supposed to be? All these things. And the silver lining is really the learning. Like you said, you got to go deep in to figuring out how you're going to win. And when you find something like the Elance Odesk, right, you realize, whoa, I've got a bunch of assets here that are very affordable to me, that know a bunch of stuff that I don't know right now, and we could really use without going broke on this thing. So what a huge deal. So let's talk a little bit as you talk about that and you kind of find your sweet spot, right? What do you think your superpower is, Brad? Like what really jumps in?
I mean, it's nothing specially unique. I mean, I think actually just had a big leadership meeting with all of our senior leaders in our company. And one of them asked me, I had kind of a roundtable to let them do a Q&A with the CEO and just let them kind of ask me questions. And one of them asked me that as well. And I think self-discipline. I mean, I know it's not super elaborate or magical, but that's a big thing that Jim Collins talks about in all of his books. And if anybody gets a chance, you go to jimcollins.com and you go to the thing called the MAP. He's taken all the key principles from all of his 5 or 6 books and reduced it down into what he calls the MAP. And he kind of categorized it. And it's 3 buckets: disciplined people, performing disciplined thought, and executing disciplined action. And it's all rooted in discipline. And the upbringing I had with being in kind of an entrepreneurial type environment, I worked in our family business and worked in the warehouse and swept floors and so forth. And just discipline I get up at 5 o'clock every morning. And I think I would attest that to probably a big part of what drives our success. What I get done in those first 2 hours before most people get up, that I get in 10 additional hours per week when most people get up at 7 or 8, makes all the difference in the world. So self-discipline and drive and commitment to, finish and find a way to win. I mean, when the setbacks come, but it all comes back to discipline. When Great by Choice is another one of Collins's books, and he looks at all the characteristics of some of the top leaders. And it's not just discipline, it is fanatical discipline is what they talk about. And not everybody has it. But I've was brought up with it, and I still have my weak moments from time to time. But I think that's been a key element to me being able to kind of get on the other side.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's one of the my number one go-to, right? If I said, and we do this, I have a training today about this. And one of the key elements on that training is that self-discipline separates great leaders from good leaders. And that doesn't mean you cannot be a good leader if you're a little bit lax on your self-discipline. I've seen a lot of good leaders, but great leaders, they never lack that quality ever. Yeah. It's incredible, the separator. And I think Collins has got it dead on. I think that's a great tool right there. That's a nice little nugget right there. Just that max. It's
called the MAP.
Bring all his works into a tighter framework. Man, that right there's worth gold right there.
If everybody on this would go to, and I would just highly encourage you to do, if you go to, I think it's just jimcollins.com or whatever, and you go on and you click on, I think, concepts is the tab you click on. And basically he got asked after he did all these bodies of work, they're like, Jim, can you tie it all together? Can you put a bow on it for us? And that's what caused him to create this thing called the MAP. And there's a short little 5-minute video right above it. And then you'll see, so disciplined people. And so he pulls from each of the books, what are disciplined people concepts, right? Right people, right seats, and level 5 leadership. Then disciplined thought, right? And then disciplined action, and bullets before cannonballs is one of his frameworks. The hedgehog concept. So he places each of these kind of key nuggets of timeless principles, but he buckets them in one of those 3 categories. Is it the people? Is it the thought? Or is it the action? And then the 4th one is built to last. To your point, that kind of speaks to his book on that piece. But it just does an amazing job of tying it all together into one piece, little video that kind of explains it. But as he said, it's all rooted in discipline to start with.
That's so good. Well, I think it's a huge superpower. I mean, I think it is a great separator for sure. Knowing what you know now, the toothpaste challenge, as you go through that, do you sit there and go, I would do things differently now. I would do something in a different way. Like, would there be something that you would choose another way?
It's funny. This is another question I got asked by my leadership team today. And, Trent, I mean, I guess I've had enough negative experiences that because I was committed to learning from them and finding a way to translate into a positive aspect of my life, that I really wouldn't at all. I think we all arrive who we are as individuals. I'm pleased to kind of the status of kind of where things are in my life. I definitely had a lot of challenges and issues that kind of occurred and had to navigate. Some I was a part of, some I wasn't, that kind of happened. But they all translate into who I am, today. I mean, in my early 20s, we had a family business disaster that happened with that entrepreneurial environment I grew up in. Things blew up in an industry that was changing dramatically and caused the business to kind of, go under. Our family went under. I had to take a semester off school, come home, be a parent to my sisters, and kind of help and participate. Not parent, but just kind of help support with my parents kind of navigating. They kind of, had some challenges they navigated kind of during that time frame. I would never change any of it. I mean, it accelerated my emotional maturity at a young age, and did for both of my little sisters as well. That just adversity. And as you know, as an entrepreneur, I mean, I could wake up tomorrow and like the house is on fire, and it's like, okay, all right, we need to do this, do that. Let's move, let's get out.
Yeah, like that's the challenge of the day, right?
Like it's just, it creates a level of muscle and strength to deal with adversity that, you just know, hey, this is a challenge, but I know there's going to be a positive thing on the other side. And I'm going to commit to finding, what that is. So everything I've looked back to, everything from teeth whitening pins blowing up to translating into me launching a business I never would have, done, to, some things that have happened in my personal life or otherwise have all translated into, positive kind of opportunities. But it does take a mentality of like, how am I going to find the win in the mess? And if you don't have that, and it's just like, oh, woe is me, and I'm going to wallow in this, and I'm going to drink a fifth of bourbon a day and deal with drugs, deal with my issue. Like, you're not finding the win in the mess. But if you are willing to find the wins in the mess, most people probably wouldn't change some things that have happened.
Yes. Yeah. You got to keep pushing to find that way, right? That's what winners do. Winners find a way. So I think what you're talking about there, I think about Gladwell and his 10,000 hours, right? When you talk about handling adversity, you got a lot of reps handling challenges when you're a CEO for a long time, when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a founder, like every day. And I really push this hard on companies I work with. Like, I don't like problems. I don't like that language. I think the verbiage is negative. I think it has a negative connotation. I don't want your problems, Brad, and I don't think you want mine. But man, the moment you tell me you've got a challenge, I'm like, ooh, how can I help you with the challenge? Like, you got a challenge? Because I'm always up for a challenge, Brad. You know that. And you're the same guy, because I've asked you, right? I've literally like, hey, Brad, I got a challenge. What do you think? And you're like, oh, I got some ideas, right? Let's get together on finding a way together. And you jump in. And I don't know if you're so excited about that if I call you and I go, man, I got a major problem, Brad. This really sucks. Like, you're like, yeah, listen, I got my own, man. I don't know, right? So talk to me about, is there a value? Is there something like you could, what would you tell someone, a behavior or a value right now? If they're down right now and they're facing one of those big challenges of life, similar to your family, right? Where things are changing, like where you're like, you may have to change your address, like you may not make payroll. These are big challenges that you're looking at an account that does not have enough money in it for whatever, mortgage, whatever it is. What's the one value that you would tell people to stay to? What do you have to stay true to in that situation?
And again, I mean, I don't think it's any kind of magic. It's just it's being relentlessly determined to get on the other side. I mean, it comes back to that discipline and grit. I mean, there's people that hit adversity and they go down with it, and there's people that hit it and they find a way to get through on the other side. And so I don't know if there's any particularly magical, oh, here's a special extra neat value that you got to
Yeah.
have to get through
Yeah.
a challenge. I just think it starts with discipline, because discipline ultimately addresses both the positive times and the negative times that you deal with. And just kind of relentless determination to get, on the other side. I mean, I've absolutely been in that place multiple times where I was going down a path, even with this business I'm currently in, before I launched the whole having our own VA and providing our own VA services. I was doing a bunch of consulting and advisory for a number of years, and it was just one-off project-based type of work. I get paid a fee to come in and spend 4 hours with the management team and tell them what all their constraints were, but there was no recurring revenue aspect to it, right? And I had to go find the next project, the next opportunity, and it just got very, very taxing. It was just like, this isn't where I want to be. And everybody kept telling me, Brad, why don't you just launch your own outsourcing operation? Like, I mean, you can have recurring revenue. I'm like, man, I got to go to another country. I got to figure out how to incorporate. I got to go, trust a bunch of people, build a whole management team. Like, I was like, but you know what? And I tell you too, when you get married and you have a family and you have children, right? You got other things to win for besides yourself. And I think when you get into that place as well, that you've got another set of folks that you're fighting for, aside from just yourself. And, I was in that place and I just wasn't happy with kind of where it was going. And I wasn't one to go, find the next one-off types of projects and so forth. I mean, we would refer people to folks that we had vetted, but it just wasn't creating a recurring kind of component. And so I said, whatever, we're going to do it. And I'm just going to trust that I got the right people and that we can kind of make it happen. I had no idea what I was doing. I never launched a company in another country or dealt with any of the circumstances we navigated. But I went to the Philippines. I found a guy. I went and one thing I would tell people to share a specific value is leverage your network. Lean into your network and relationships. Don't deal with your problem and your challenge on your own. Leverage, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Facebook, whether it's your personal group. That's one thing that's amazing about being a part of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, that we're a part of. We have a global Slack channel that has 8,000 members on it. And if I post a question of anything I'm dealing with, within inside of 30 minutes, I've got 20 responses from other entrepreneurs that have been there and helping me out with it. So, one value I would say specific, aside from determination and relentless kind of commitment, is the ability to lean on others, drop pride, and put your challenge out there. You'd be amazed in your network and your relationships. And when I was up against the wall before I launched this business, that's what I did. I put out my network, and I found a guy that was an EO Australia member that was an expert in helping people launch businesses in the Philippines. And if I'd never taken the time to look for that, he ended up responding. And I flew over there and he took me on a tour of 20 facilities in 5 days. A very unique niche experience that I wouldn't have found otherwise. And that's what translated into me wanting to build and grow our operation. So don't live in it on your own. Definitely lean on, and if you're younger, you may not have as big of a network and relationship, but reach out to others that are older than you, right? Your parents, your friends, uncles, family, people that can help you with that path. You never know what you're going to stumble upon, but you got to be able to be willing to drop your pride to do that a lot of times.
Well, I think that's a great tip for people. And when things are down, people are embarrassed of their situation. They're hurt. They feel shame. They feel all these things. And I'm always astounded. I had a very tough event happen, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And I was just happened to be at an EO event in San Diego at the time. And, I got to go on stage here in 90 minutes. And I get a call that was, devastating to me from a friend. And I couldn't, it was hard challenge to be faced with right at the moment. And I leaned on a friend, not a close friend, but a friend in the organization, and just kind of shared. And they immediately could identify they'd had similar challenges. And I thought, I'm the only idiot that could be so dumb to be facing this challenge. Like the whole shame cycle's working on me of how stupid I must be and all these things, right? And then you start talking to people like, oh my gosh, lots of people in business have gone through things like this. And I'm reminded of people sharing a woman who shares, oh, I've had a miscarriage. And then you find out in your network, wow, 10 of the other moms in my network, 4 of them have also had miscarriages. Like, people just don't talk about these things. But if you ask and you share and you have relationship, it's my biggest concern, I think, with the young generation is that I don't know if they're building those networks and relationships like you and I did at our age. And because we were doing business and vendors, and it was always relations were huge to our success in those early companies, of course. And so I see kids because of the phone, the technology, the kind of solidarity of it all. I'm
Yeah.
concerned for that. Do you see that?
Yeah. I mean, I think you've actually helped me find the answer to the question of what would I do differently. And you
Oh,
prompted
good.
one thing that
All right.
I would definitely is in my early 20s is I would have been much, much more intentional about the relationship building that I was doing. You know, at that point when I would meet people, it was like, for whatever it was, whether it's business or personal, otherwise, I wasn't ever very intentional about building that relationship. Taking that business card and sending them an email or a follow-up afterwards of, hey, it's great to connect. I mean, in today's world, connecting on LinkedIn and following and so forth. Because that's one thing that I've realized. I probably didn't start that aggressive. And actually, when I joined EO, it was kind of the first time. All throughout my 20s, it was just me and a business partner, and we were banging our heads against the wall trying to solve problems. And I didn't really reach out to any kind of business or organizational network. In my early 30s, when I kind of got involved with EO and some other types of organizations. But that is something that 100% I would tell any young people, and I would do myself, that would have given me a lot more strength to navigate some of the challenges if I had, I'm sitting on a plane beside somebody, right? My early 20s self, I meet, some guy that's like a VP of sales for a big organization. My early 20s self, oh, that was cool to meet that guy. My 41-year-old self, absolutely. Let's connect. Here's my card. Follow up. Send them an email afterwards. Great meeting you. Let's stay in touch. Connect on LinkedIn. Send them maybe even a handwritten letter, possibly. It's a whole different value system of what I've known. Now that network is like a safety net, right? That weave of network and relationships is almost. That's why even the software company we're doing, Jason, who's my partner in that, we were talking, and that's kind of the value of it. We launched this thing was, you got members of an organization, even like an EO organization that don't even know each other, right? There's some that know each other, but don't. And so this software does like these one-on-one collisions and intros everybody via email. And it's like thickening the weave of the basket of that relationship. And if everybody in their life can think about that, think about the people in your life as nodes on a network. How connected are you and how thick is that weave? Because when you do have a setback or a challenge, it's a safety weave net you can fall on with those people, those relationships, those experiences.
But that really, paints a picture, right? If I have lots of gaps in my net, I may fall through my catch net, right? Like my catch net really may not work. But if my network is tight and I've got this deeply woven net, like I'm ready to walk the high wire. Like, what's going to happen? I got a net here, man. I mean, I'm not too worried about it. And if I make it across the high wire, it's worth millions, right? But if I fall, I'll go back and start over because the net will catch me, right? I think there's a lot of strength in that, man. That's big. Talk to me quickly about the tough challenge of being a young father with these children, running and then running all the business and the balance, and how do you do it? Being a good husband, being a good father, you're going at 100 miles an hour. Talk to me how you do that well.
Well, I tell you, it's back to the original question we talked about as far as what's one of the biggest things that's made a big difference in my life, and putting, that EOS framework, getting the right management infrastructure in place that got me out of the day-to-day and the detail of everything. Also freed up my time, tremendously as well. And also my stress level about things. Like, I don't know of every single bump that happens in the business, right? As I just transfer that to kind of the management team, and I focused on leadership and development of the strategy. And that's had a huge impact of the home life side of things, as well. As far as my approach to it, and growing up in an entrepreneurial environment, seeing a lot of other entrepreneurs and so forth, is that they focus on the big wins for their family. They're like, look, I've got to work 90 hours a week so that we can go do this big, European vacation. And I got to do all this, and we're gonna do these big things. And most people's children or spouses are like, look, I just want the little wins from you along the way, right? The random flowers that you show up, making sure you're there to read books at night for me when I'm going to bed and so forth. So I've really taken that to heart. And fortunately, my business is virtual, so I get to work from home for the most part. This is my home office situation here. And so come 5 o'clock, probably 90% of the time, I'm walking down those stairs and I'm a part of dinner every morning. I'm usually making breakfast for our family usually. I've just chosen that, particularly the first 10 to 12 years of your children's life is where the biggest impression happens. A lot of things start getting hard coded at 12 to 13 years beyond, and just trying to be as present, intentional as I can. And having a business that allows for the virtual flexibility, and those mornings, those evenings, and just being as efficient with my time and structure as I can, so I can be committed and focused. And I know you're in Michigan. We were actually up not too long ago and visiting, and you and I were trying to connect up. And that early morning when we go on vacation, I mean, we were 18 days that we were in Michigan, and I took one phone call during that entire time. Not 18, we were 15 and 3 days at my parents afterwards. But I get up at 5:30 before everybody else is up. And that gives me an hour of time to kind of deal with any kind of pressing needs and so forth. And then as soon as the kids are up, I'm there and I'm present the whole rest of the day. We just went to Disney for 7 days. I didn't work the entire time, except for those early mornings. I get up and I'm able to kind of get things knocked out. So, some people just can't be morning people. They're just not. They can't make it happen. For me, it's been a huge part of what's allowed me to be successful and then also have the family flexibility, having that early morning.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Disney. You and I built our relationship at Disney. I knew Brad Stevens pretty well, right? I'd heard of Brad, knew him through a little bit through the Entrepreneur Organization, but then you and I ended up just by chance on a behind-the-scene Disney tour together and spent a half day with, Walt and the boys. Not really Walt, but everyone there, and it was fabulous, right? It was a great experience. But probably I'll take away most from that trip, which is great, seeing how Disney does things. But probably most of it was, building our relationship. I thought that was really great. So
yeah, that was our last event before COVID hit, I think.
Oh, that was. Yeah, that was.
Right?
Yeah,
we were both at a podcasting expo, and it was the last in-person event that I went to before COVID hit. So
yeah, that's right. Speaking in Orlando. Oh
right.
Yeah. So when you think about that, I think this discipline this morning is very important. I've heard a lot of people tell me, Trent, I don't know if I can do it. I'm a pretty big night owl. Like, being a disciplined person in the morning is actually being a disciplined person in the evening. It's about putting your body down, because waking up at 5:00 isn't bad if you're in bed at 9:30. Like, that's not bad at all. The problem is if you're up at 1:00 in the morning, 5:00 is an early wake up call. You're not going to be at your best by 1 p.m. because you've already got in, these hours, and you're running on 3-4 hours sleep. And so for me, we're back to self-discipline. Do you have the discipline to walk this line? Are you up watching the games late, or, can you just watch the 7-minute highlights the next day? It's so beautiful now that everything's in a highlight in 3.5 minutes, right? Like, right. Hey, I'd love to catch the Braves game. And last week I interviewed Bobby Magianis, right? Who is
nice.
Atlanta Braves baseball coach. He's a hitting coach for them. And Bobby was fabulous, just talking about a couple of really just interesting things. And so, but that discipline is a big one. Let me ask you, you've had a lot of success. You've won many games, many battles you've won. What's the best battle that you've conquered in your lifetime?
I'll tell you, that one I shared about the disaster we had with our last business is probably right up there. That was a big mess, and ironically enough, in that business as well. In parallel to having all those products grow up, we had two different businesses. We had a dental division we were servicing and a beauty division we were serving, a bunch of spas and salons and dentists. And a bunch of the dentists started suing the spas and salons for what they felt was practicing dentistry without a license. So in addition to that, we were dealing with lawsuits all over the place throughout the country. So that was a double doozy during that time frame. I'd say kind of getting the guts, I guess, to make the first step in this entrepreneurial kind of direction after coming out of college. I mean, I graduated college, had an offer with a company in Atlanta. I was going to come work full time. Had a lot of student debt that I needed to take care of and pay. And 2 weeks before I was supposed to start, I was actually going to do investment banking in Atlanta with a company, and I knew that wasn't going to be my long-term path. I was going to do something entrepreneurial. But 2 weeks before I was supposed to start, they ended up going under. So I got a notice in the mail and said that Robertson Stephens, no relation to me, but PH Stephens, they had gotten shut down. They were big in the tech sector. This is 2002. They had taken E-Trade public, really involved, and Fleet Bank that owned them ended up shutting them down. And it took the entire office by surprise, and had no idea that was kind of going to happen. So I'd already committed to these guys like 9 months prior, even before I'd graduated. Got a signing bonus and And it's funny, I got to keep my signing bonus, and I got 3 months severance pay, and never worked a day for the company. So I was like
a lottery ticket. Like, could you just go apply all that money right onto your debt and take another job for college? You know, it's
yeah,
crazy.
So it was,
That's awesome.
But that was a big fork in the road path for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'd already gotten an apartment up in Buckhead in Atlanta. I was going to be living with another young guy. We were going to be young and single and making great investment banking money as a 21 or 22-year-old. And, you know, once that came, it was a major kind of life decision to say, all right, I always want to do this entrepreneurial thing. And so my uncle, who was a doctor, had been telling me about this idea of helping low-income people qualify for free medications and, you know, working with cross-border pharmacies in Canada. And so I kind of had that down on the table. I was like, well, and I had some other job offers that I could have taken, but I tucked my tail. I canceled, lost a month's deposit with a guy up in Buckhead, moved back in with my parents into a bedroom in the house, living with my parents, and made the decision to launch my first business. And literally in a room about half the size, in that business, we help low-income people qualify for free medications. We ended up launching and had my mom, my grandmother, my aunt all within 2-3 feet of each other, all on computers. And I got my whole family, and I said, hey, I need your guys to help me launch this company. And so they would sit there and answer, you know, phone calls. And that's how we kind of got that business off the ground. But that's one of the biggest. I remember sitting and having to make that decision. Am I going to go ahead and go down this path, or I've got these other offers, I can go work for some other companies, guaranteed money, or go ahead and do this entrepreneurial path? And I did, and I've never looked back. That's all I've done in the last 20 years.
What do you think? What do you think gave you the courage?
I think growing up and seeing an entrepreneurial kind of environment, even though one that had struggled and had some, you know, challenges associated with it. But having my parents honestly there to support me. My mom was one of my first employees and was right there beside me and to support and help me. And I knew my dad had tons of experience and knowledge, and knew that he would be right there to provide guidance and support for me right out of the gate. So I think I've always had an amazingly supportive family growing up, and we've always had each other's back and have been there. And so making that decision to stay at home and have the help and support there, knowing that they had my back, was something that helped make it happen.
Okay. Awesome. I mean, I know that when you talked about perseverance, you know, Bobby and I, this coach, right? He and I talked about, and he talked about the fact that he didn't have a plan B, right? Like he's got, I think he's been in pro baseball for 30 years now, but he didn't have a plan B, and he kind of beats himself up. But now he's a guy who's over 50 who received his master's in performance psychology at the age of 50, right? Like this guy, you know, that's courage, right? To go back and go do your schooling at, you know, in your 40s. And so pretty cool. But some of that perseverance and some of that grit to me was that there was no fallback. Like there is, when you say, hey, you just got to go do it, and there's no opportunity for you. Hey, there's no other option I have. And part of that is like you don't have a right or a left. You've only got to go forward. So you better find a way to get around, get through, get under, get over. But you got to find a way.
Yeah, no, it's and sometimes giving yourself that ultimatum, you know, the whole burn the ship story of,
yeah,
that just as cliche as it is, it's really the decision you got to do. You give yourself no other path. Most human beings are capable. All human beings are capable of, I mean, what's the stat? I mean, 80% more than we actually try and take advantage of. I mean, our brain and what we're capable of doing, we tap a fraction of it.
yes.
And it's just those people that make that choice to, you know, to do it or not. And sometimes it requires putting yourself in an ultimatum situation. And that'll what kind of spark the change.
All right. Let me, last question before we go to a couple things. You've worked with a lot of people. You've consulted a lot of people. When they look inside the mirror, I think people miss things about themselves. Like you said, hey, you got so much more brain capacity to tap. You have so much more ability. I mean, we're only using 20% of our capability. There's lots more potential in there. What do you see when you look at them that they might not see themselves in the mirror? What are they missing?
I'd say it's some similar things that I kind of went on in my own journey, and kind of what I share in our current business, and kind of inspiring people to really delegate and get outside of the day-to-day detail of their operations. but I see that they're missing that they can let go of the reins, that have trust in other people to perform and deliver. And it's this thing I call kind of an 85% rule. You know, there's a lot of things that are getting done in my business that, look, if I was micromanaging every single moment and so forth, yes, would everything be 100% perfect, but we'd also be about 1/10 of our size, right? If things can get 85 to 90% of the way there, that I would personally do it, and the job gets done and we move down the road, then it's a win. And having that comfort level to just, so many entrepreneurs hold on to the reins so damn tight. You know, it's like, I've got to control everything, every single thing that does, right? Every single blog that goes out, I got to have every single wordsmith, every single word that goes on. I got to make every single decision. And I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs that have tinkered with the idea of outsourcing and VAs and exploring that, but are just fearful of letting go of control, or even their staff and their managers. It's like, no, we're the only ones that can do it. There's no way possible anybody could do it as good as we do. But they go down the path and they start just letting go of the reins some and establish confidence. And they find all of a sudden that it can be done, that they can relinquish. They can, what I call, automate and delegate, right? If you're going to scale, you have to automate and delegate at some point. Like there's a very video testimony on our website. The Rob Shotwell and his wife have a video production company in New Jersey, and they share in there that for years, the two of them were living in the business, the old E-Myth, right? They were living in it. They hadn't even taken a vacation in like numbers and numbers of years. And it always talked about this idea of getting other people involved and delegating. And once they finally took the step and made the mindset shift, now they've got 2, maybe I think 3 VAs that they're looking to kind of bring on, that's now changed their whole mindset and how they're kind of growing, but not just outsourcing and VAs, but just a whole mindset of relinquishing that control. So I think they're missing in the mirror that they can have other people run their business. They can be financially successful. They can win without having to control every single move.
It's awesome. All right, let's finish with this. That's so good. First of all, thank you, Brad. I mean, I know our listeners see value in the episode today. I enjoyed learning about all of it, man. Collins' Max. I can't wait to go check that out. For you, just, talking about the discipline that you bring every day, talk about how important it is those first 2 hours of the morning, what you get value out of that. That's a huge, huge takeaway for me. For the people, it's time real quick for the best way to win. Is there something that you want to share with the listeners that we did not touch on today? Is there something that we've missed maybe in all of it that we'd want to share with somebody?
Oh man, we covered a lot of different nuggets and elements. I think, something I'd share with everybody to do an exercise we did recently, actually part of my forum and entrepreneurs organization. We took a retreat. So we take 2 retreats per year. We meet monthly for 4 hours per month within our forum. And then we have 2 retreats per year. And one's usually a flyaway, one's a local. And this past year we went to Colorado, and we had an extra fellow EO member named Finian Kelly, former president for Colorado, has this whole program called the Intentionality Compass. And it's a whole exercise to really just come to terms with what your purpose is, what your kind of core values are. And most of us have a general idea. We've talked about it and so forth, but really haven't taken the time to do it. And about 3 weeks before we went out on this, he gave us a workbook to go through and to really answer those hard questions for ourselves that I hadn't taken the time to do. And sit in that chair right there. And I took that hour and a half, usually most mornings, and I sat there with my iPad and my good notes and just sat there and cranked out. And it was so helpful to take the time, blocking out everything else, and just think about, what is my individual purpose statement? What are my individual core values that I want to live by? And for people that haven't taken the time to really do that, and you check it out. I think he's got the guide on this. If you go to intentionalitycompass, I think .com. But just to really sit down and come to terms with that, and to kind of, what is your guide? And we have it for our companies, right? We have our company mission statements, our core values, so on and so forth. And, for me, I mean, it was just helping individuals realize their potential. Just as when I really looked and reflected on a lot of what my behavior is, how I've interacted with people, where I've added value in my life, where I seek value, is I love seeing people really achieve what they're truly capable of. And I cannot stand things that aren't optimized. I mean, I just, whether it's brushing your teeth or launching a business, like, there's an efficient way to do things. So I would just encourage anybody we haven't talked about today is just sit down, take some time, and really come up with a couple of sentence purpose statement and personal core values that go along with your business that really kind of put you in touch with yourself.
That's great. That's great. All right. Brad, tell them again where they can find you.
Sure. If you want to check out our business and kind of what we do, outsourceaccess.com. We kind of explore the whole outsourcing VA world. There's a video right there on our site where I kind of take you behind the scenes in the Philippines and share this whole world. I'm huge on education, whether you end up using us or not. I love to educate people about this whole space. And there's some educational webinars and stuff that I do on there. And then bradstevenstraining.com. I do a ton of speaking globally on the topic of redefining how you scale, how to automate and delegate with VAs and easy tech tools. If anybody here is a part of an organization or a business group that you're looking for someone to speak on that topic, that's very practical, case study driven, bradstevenstraining.com. You can kind of check that out and just look me up, Brad Stevens on LinkedIn. Would love to connect with you and exchange and see some of the content we're pushing out there. And automatedelegate.com is our podcast. It's short, 25 to 30-minute podcast where we do nothing but drill in, and I have people give me specific examples of what they're doing to automate and delegate in their life. And so check that out.
I'm going to check that out too. Next thing I'm going to ask you, last thing, is your quote, your go-to kind of quote, verse. Do you have something that you're well read? I know you read a lot. So do you have a go-to quote? So I'm going to have you think about that, because I got a go-to for today. I have always quote of the week. So for everybody else, follow us on YouTube Live, follow us on LinkedIn. We go live with this every week. Follow us on the Leadershipity channel, the YouTube channel. We are on Instagram, Twitter at either Leadershipity or Trent M. Clark. You can find us there, Facebook, Trent M. Clark, or the Leadershipity page. I'm all over LinkedIn. That's probably our biggest framework there. And of course, leadershipity.com. Make sure you're looking for our upcoming book, The Pyramid of Leadershipity, Accountability for Leaders. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please continue listening and rate us Winners Find a Way 5 stars. Subscribe to the show. I work hard to find value-driving stories from the 1% leaders for each and every episode. Of course, Brad Stevens delivered just like every one of our people, and it's just awesome to hear your perception, man, and hear your quotes. Your automate delegate is so good. I subscribe to your Monday morning. Good. Give us your email for Monday morning for everybody. The tool, addictive tool.
Oh, the addictive tool series. Yeah. So, yeah, if anybody here is interested, and I've got a whole set of tools and resources. If you send an email to tools, TOOLS at outsourceaccess.com, and just put Leadershipity in the subject line. You don't have to write a message to us or anything. Just send it to tools at Outsource Access, put Leadershipity in the subject line. And as you can imagine, that goes to a VA that I have, and we'll shoot out to you. We have a thing called our addictive tool series. It's a once a week, just cool tech tool or resource that maybe you've never heard of before. We don't have to send you a ton of stuff. It's just one tool once a week. Cool tools like, Screencast-O-Matic that lets you screencast recording, tools like Thankster.com that do automated handwritten letters from a mobile app. So just some kind of neat tools are out there. But yeah, if you send an email to that and put Leadershipity in the subject line, we'll shoot you that and a list of other tools and resources that may be helpful.
Awesome. Okay. What's your go-to quote, Brad? Things are down, but this can level you, ground you, set you in your foundation right away.
For me, it's very straightforward. And this is actually, I was actually salutatorian in my high school. And when I had to do a speech, I did two things. I actually referenced this quote and I sang a song, which I couldn't believe that I actually did, but I asked him if I could. And it's The Man in the Arena. Theodore Roosevelt is just one of my favorite absolute go-tos. It represents a lot of everything we talked about today. It's not the critic who counts. It's the man in the arena that, at the end may realize high achievement, but at the worst that they fail while daring greatly, that their place shall never be among those timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat because they didn't put themselves in the arena and give themselves opportunity. So I absolutely love that quote. I reference it a ton.
Yes.
And then The River by Garth Brooks. Anybody's never listened to that song, the lyrics, that's one that for my graduation was one that I was passionate about. But the words of that song, just again, I think just describes the world of entrepreneurship, that no matter what battle you're navigate, you're gonna run the river until it runs dry and find a path. There'll be rough waters and storms, but if you stay the course, you can get on the other side.
We got some great references today. Like in my notes, I'm gonna have references to so many people, so many things. I love it's the critic thing. I love that the man in the arena. I love it. I actually have it sitting here on my wall, right? Like it's powerful. Brene Brown probably really brought it to light because in her book Daring Greatly, she named her book after a quote in that of Daring Greatly. And it's a fabulous book, by the way. Just another name drop reference right there. Another great book, Daring Greatly. For me, I spend every week thinking about my guests for the week. We know in advance, obviously, who's coming on. So, and Brad, in our relationship, I went to a Bible verse for you, 2 Timothy 1:7. God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. And that's exactly what I was thinking of when I thought of Brad Stevens this week. That came to me, and I let the Lord kind of guide that for me. And that immediately just, wow, I thought, man, does that give me Brad Stevens? There is nothing to be scared of in this world. Like, it does not serve you. There's fear, and I get it. And, but being scared and timid has never served. And man, when I think about power, love, and self-discipline, you came just straight out, like jumped off the page at me. So it was powerful for me. And so thank you so much for coming aboard, man.
Oh, it's very kind of you, man. That's very, very humbling to have that shared. I appreciate it. It's been a great experience, and I've had plenty of takeaways here. I mean, I love too the way you rephrased. We don't talk about problems; we talk about challenges. And I'm actually going to have a note here. I'm going to mention that to my team going forward. That's how we're going to rephrase our vocabulary on that one in particular. But it's been great. Thanks for the shares and the experience as well on your end.
For everyone, Brad Stevens on the Winners Find a Way show. Thank you for joining with us. See us every Friday, 12:30 Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific on all the networks. We go live.